Another way of showing all of this is by using a gauge. Now, a gauge is a very complex instrument and there's a host of things you can do with it. So if I give it a proper row height, because it really needs it, and I insert a gauge, you can see the various gauges that we've got. It's like the gauges that you've got in your car. They show you the speed. So for instance, this one, it could range from 0 all the way to 100 miles or 100 kilometers an hour, and showing a red line, so that if you go past 80 miles an hour, you'll be in the red zone. Alternatively, it could be a bit like a thermometer, and indeed one of them actually is a thermometer. So let's stick to our standard radial. Now, there is so much here we could do. If we temporarily hide the Solution Explorer, you can see that the values currently are unspecified. So let's specify them with the list price. So let's have a look at that. So you can see where it's 0 that the gauge is pointing straight down, or nearly straight down, and when it moves, it's pointing quite high up. In fact, it's pointing quite high up, 496 as well. It's not been calibrated correctly at the moment, so we need to do that. So let's go back into it and click on the scale and calibrate it. The problem is actually clicking on the scale is quite fiddly because there are so many things you could do. So the best way is to right and click, go Gauge Panel, and now we've got Scale Properties, Pointer Properties, Range Properties, and the Panel Properties. So let's have a look at the Scale Properties. And you can see it has a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 100. So no wonder when we went to 200, when we went to 1000, it was going to maximum. So we need to change that. So we could change that to the maximum being the sum of the list price perhaps, or but you could put in a hard code figure. So let's just change that to sum of list price and see whether that will actually work. We'll go to preview, add in everything, view report, scroll down, and look, it's not going to work. The reason why is because when we get down to these, it's going from a range of 0 to 196. For this one, it's going from a range of 0 to 1431. Here, it's doing a range of 0 to 0. That's because we've listed the maximum as being the value itself. So that it's not going to work. So I think we need to hard code in our maximum price, at least for now, and we'll put in 3800. So now that's been hard coded in, let's have a look and see where the pointer lies. For zeros, the pointer is now lying again nearly straight down, but when we get further down to non-zero values, here you can see a little bit of a movement for 196, and when we get to 1000 and change, there we can see a lot of movement. Now, if you could see a bit clearly, you would see that there are actually numbers written down here as well. Right, so what else can we do with a gauge? Well, we can add ranges. Now, range is like that red line I was talking about earlier. So if I have a look at range, we could have a range going from, let's do the red line, from 3000 to 3800. And you can see you could put a particular colour in it. I want a blue colour, let's say, and it gradients to salmon. And so there you can just about see it. And we have another range, which is now called range 2. That's the one I've just added, which goes from, let's say that goes from 0 to 1000, and that goes from yellow to green. So if I make this even this row bigger, you can suddenly start to see it come to life. So I just need to perhaps make this a bit wider. There we go. So let's have a look at it now. So you can see gauges can show a lot of information. It can show ranges where it should be. It can show where it is. You can have additional pointers. You don't just have to have one pointer. They are really very versatile and well worth experimenting with. So if we go to this one, you can see quite clearly it's not in the first zone, it's not in the last zone, it's somewhere in the middle. And here we can see it's not 0, but it's still in the first zone. And that's very clear, I think. So you can add additional pointers and calibrate them by adding pointer. You can add indicators, you can add labels, you can add all sorts of things. Gauges are very useful, very versatile, but you do need a bit of room on your screen or your printout for it. So it might be best in a summary report perhaps.